can never remember phrasal verbs in English. Teacher Prix, why are phrasal verbs so difficult? And how can I learn phrasal verbs in English more easily? Well, that's what you're going to find out in this video. Coming up. Hey friends, Teacher Prix here to help you talk to anyone, anywhere, anytime in English. First and foremost, thank you so much for watching this lesson. If it's your first time here, consider subscribing because every week I make different kinds of English lessons to help you become a better and more confident English speaker. Now guys, let's get down to business. First, phrasal verbs are difficult because they have multiple meanings. And this can be very stressful to English learners, especially if they don't have a clear study routine. They don't know how to study phrasal verbs efficiently. This is why you have that feeling that phrasal verbs are so difficult. First, because they have way too many translations, and second, because you haven't yet developed an efficient way to study phrasal verbs. The second reason why phrasal verbs are so difficult is you are ignoring the context. When you see a phrasal verb in a sentence, you probably tend to focus on the phrasal verb alone. You ignore the information the text or the video or the podcast is giving you, and you focus only on the phrasal verb. When you do that, and I am sure that many of you do, it gets more difficult to remember the phrasal verb because you are taking it out of a context. If you want to learn phrasal verbs and remember phrasal verbs, you gotta study them in contextualized materials. What is a contextualized material? You can't just study the phrasal verb alone. If you watch my phrasal verb lessons here on my channel, I give you the meaning, but then I go immediately to the context. I give you a conversation, a phrase, two phrases, but then I explain it. I explain the context. So maybe the girl is talking to her boyfriend, and then the boyfriend looks at her and describes the problem, and then I give you the phrasal verb. If I just give you the meaning and go, it gets very difficult to remember the phrasal verb you're studying. That's why you stay in this loop. More phrasal verbs, never remember. More phrasal verbs, and never remember. Because you take them out of the context and you want to know them. The next reason why you have problems remembering phrasal verbs, it's difficult to study phrasal verbs, and stay until the end because I'm going to tell you what to do, okay? Don't worry, I'm going to give you some solutions, some recommendations, ideas that I have tested in my BSA, my students in my academy, with my private students for the past 15 years. So I know these tips work, okay? But reason number 3 why you can't remember phrasal verbs, they are difficult for you to study, you don't know what to do about phrasal verbs, is you don't know how to use a phrasal verb in a sentence because you never practice doing that. Ah, booyah! If you are old here on my channel, you have had multiple opportunities of changing that because in all phrasal verb lessons that I give here on my channel, I always invite you to post examples in the comment. What I'm basically doing is making you use the lesson you study. That is intentional. It's not just to make me feel good about people participating, okay? It's about you changing the future of your English. Probably the way you study phrasal verbs is to get the meaning, maybe write down, maybe you take the time to write down the phrasal verb and write the meaning, maybe write the example of the dictionary, and then you stop there. You don't create. As human beings, we have the power to create beautiful things and not so beautiful things, I'm afraid. But here, on your journey to English fluency, you have a great power on your hands, which is to create. Use English as a tool to get the things you want, to communicate the stories you have to tell. So whenever you learn a phrasal verb, if you don't practice using that phrasal verb, even if it's simply in written language, maybe you don't have a speaking partner, that's okay. But if you don't try to create an example, you're never going to remember that phrasal verb. It gets more difficult to remember that phrasal verb because your process is messed up. That's what is wrong. If you have a messed up process, it doesn't matter how many times you study, it doesn't matter how many new phrasal verbs you learn, you're never going to remember them. Fix the process and the problem dissolves. Not talking about perfection. There's always something new to learn, there's always something new to master, but you will get better at it, okay? That's my goal. That's what I always tell my babies in my academy, my BSA, my students. Are you a BSA? Well, let me know here in the comments. BSA. It is about the process. They learn a lot of phrasal verbs in my academy, but they learn the phrasal verbs in context. And then I invite them to create examples on the platform. They have a space where they can post examples, use the vocabulary they study. And that is the most powerful way to remember phrasal verbs, to remember vocabulary in general. Now, that being said, how should you study phrasal verbs? Do you have any tips, Teacher Prix? Of course I do. But before I give you the tips that I have prepared for this lesson, how about hitting the like button and subscribing to my channel? Anyway, point number 1. If you want to study phrasal verbs, you gotta limit how many phrasal verbs you study at a time. I know that there are many amazing books on the internet where there are 500 phrasal verbs, 2,000 phrasal verbs, 1,000 phrasal verbs for your next vacation. Ooh, they're just too many. You have to consider 2 things: number of phrasal verbs and conversation, where you can use the phrasal verbs you're spending time on. It doesn't make sense. Why are you studying something you're not going to use? It wouldn't be fair to give a percentage because honestly, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure you're not going to use a lot of them. What are you going to talk about? Is it a personal experience? Life stories? Present your ideas in a meeting? So where can you put that phrasal verb you're learning? Okay, that phrasal verb needs to fit in to something meaningful, a conversation, to describe your last weekend. Even to describe your routine, you use phrasal verbs. Why do you remember phrasal verbs when describing your routine? Because it is meaningful. We do that every day. We talk about that. Oh, I woke up. Oh, I took off. I turned on. These are all phrasal verbs. Oh, but teacher, they are easier. No, they're not easier. It's just that you found a connection, a conversation subject. That's why you remember those phrasal verbs. Point number 2 is about organization. And this week I posted a video about how to organize your study routine to remember vocabulary, okay? And I told you about keeping a vocabulary notebook based on conversation subjects. Why? Because you need to review the phrasal verbs you study. It's not just, oh, I learned it, okay, post it, yay, and then you never check it again. But when you organize your notebook based on conversation subjects and you include the phrasal verbs, then you can set up a review routine. And based on that, you can get back to the conversation subjects where you will find the phrasal verbs you need to learn and review and study again and practice again. Learning any language is about organization. If you are disorganized, if you are messy, if you don't have a process, it gets very complicated to learn English or pretty much any other thing in your life. That's why my students in my academy are so successful, because everything is organized. They have the modules, they have the sequence, they have the lessons, conversation subjects, the vocabulary they need to master. Everything is connected. They work on all different skills, and that makes their life easier. That's why you should not focus on the number of phrasal verbs, but rather on the quality of the phrasal verbs you study and keeping it organized based on what you want to talk about, and always getting back to them and creating more examples to help you strengthen your memory muscle. Point number 3, combine different channels to learn the phrasal verb. Nope, not talking about YouTube channels. I'm talking about your learning channels. We have primarily 3 main learning channels: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, tactile. Combine visual aids with sounds and emotions, and memorizing the phrasal verbs you study will get easier. But Priscilla, how can I do that? Well, I had a post-it here, but I think I threw it away. But basically, you're gonna grab a post-it, and then you're gonna write down the phrasal verb, okay? The phrasal verb that you want to master. I'm trying to use a visual aid and I'm using my physical memory. But teacher, why not use a vocabulary app? Well, when you use an app, you type. When you write down, you use your hands. And because you are exercising your hands, you are also exercising physical memory, which makes your memorization process wax stronger, okay? Now, you will create your example. So I'm here, the phrasal verb I chose is to put up with, okay? So I write, oh, this pen is not working, yeah, it's working. To put up with. So I wrote it here, put up with, okay? Maybe you can't see it, but I wrote it here. Then I will write the definition, okay? And I wrote a synonym, to tolerate. Tolerate. However, this tolerate, is more commonly used when you are describing things you don't tolerate. So it's more common in negative sentences, okay? Common negative sentences. I had prepared a more beautiful post-it, but this one is right now, okay? So I use different colors because I am working on my visual aids. If you have a different color, use a different color, okay? Because you are stimulating your visual channel. If you are a visual learner, you should have different post-it, colorful post-its, colorful pens, because that really helps. I'm not joking around, okay? All right, so I wrote the phrasal verb, I wrote the definition, then I'm gonna write an example. I will create an example. And if I create an example that is connected with an emotion, it's better. I will write an example that is different from the one that I wrote before, that I threw away, from the post-it that I threw away. I can't put up, I'm sorry, but this is the truth. I can't put up with my upstairs neighbor's dogs. I cannot put up with my upstairs neighbor's dogs. Why? Because they walk all night and I can hear their paws all night. So this is true. I cannot put up with my upstairs neighbor's dogs. Why? Well, what am I gonna do? You know? So here I am being realistic. The more realistic you are with your examples, the easier it gets for you to remember, okay? That's why you should focus on quality, not on numbers, okay? So here you can describe a person. I can't put up with my neighbor. My neighbor is lovely. She's a sweet woman. But I've seen the dogs. They are angry dogs, by the way. They are not very happy dogs. They start barking to pretty much everybody around. They run like all night. Well, do I say awake all night? No, but I imagine. Okay, I wake up a few times at night. Lately, I haven't. But during the day, they go crazy. They go bananas. So you can do this. And then you can read aloud. Oh, I can't put up with my upstairs neighbor's dogs. Okay, and there you have it. This will be a much more productive way for you to study, combined with emotions. This giggling that I've just had, this giggling and connecting and telling you the story, this will help me remember the phrasal verb more easily. It takes more time to do this? Yes. Is it a more productive way to study? Absolutely. So if you enjoyed this lesson, make sure to type value here in the comments. That way, I know you are learning something new. Other than that, share, like, and subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye!